it not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream
Thank
that
you.
only
If we could
willing hands
reconvene,
could
please.
do. It's on display.
All right, first up, we have a little problem to deal with. It is now deputation time. However, following the deputation, we will hear from finance staff respecting the proposed rate-supported operating budget. I want to advise committee members and staff, and all in attendance, that there will be no discussion on holding tanks at today's meeting, and anyone raising the subject will be stopped. The holding tank subject was approved at the June 27th, 2017 regular meeting of council, and in order to bring it up again, a motion to reconsider is required at council. Councillor Wells has advised he will be raising a notice of motion to reconsider at the December 12th, 2017 council meeting. So there will be no discussion tonight on the holding tank subject. Okay? Mayor Luke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I think people need to know, if they don't, that we cannot pass a motion of reconsideration at a committee of council, which is what we're doing today. So the earliest would be council next week, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. County Manager, would you like to add anything to this scenario? Or is what I've said and the mayor said sufficient?
Respectfully, I think you've got it bang on.
Councillor Brunton.
Irregardless of the possible upcoming reconsideration vote, we are going to deal with the water and wastewater rate budget tonight.
Yes.
So during that discussion, we can ask various questions applicable to those rates, can we not? We don't have to deal, it doesn't say we can change anything. The rates are in the budget document, and along with many other figures, but the reconsideration is to discuss that particular item specifically, am I correct?
Go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. That's a good question, Councillor Brunton. So essentially, what cannot be discussed tonight, because it was a decision that was made at a council meeting in June 27th, 2017, is the specific 2018 rates. So that matter of discussion needs to wait until the notice of motion to reconsider has gone through the process, which is being brought up on the 12th. Everything else that is within your report on the rate-supported budget tonight, that can be discussed. But anything specific to the resolution from June 27th regarding the 2018 holding tank rates cannot be discussed.
Okay, again, aside from the actual 2018 rate, we can ask all other questions pertaining to holding tanks that do not apply to the rate.
County Manager, go ahead.
The test to be applied is the one of pith and substance. So you can certainly ask for points of clarification. You can discuss how various rates are calculated.
Right.
You can discuss the philosophy of our rate provision, that being one small portion thereof. Where we get into trouble is if we're attempting to substantially discuss or advance any one position pertaining to that one rate, that rate that's been decided by you within the past 6 months. So you're always allowed points of clarification. You're welcome to make whatever inquiries of whichever staff, be it finance, engineering, my own office, as the case may be, for any number of points. We can't materially advance that one item or that key aspect of that one item, but you're certainly allowed any number of other questions.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Oliver, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the same subject then, assuming, and I'm glad to hear Councillor Wells is going to put forward a notice of reconsideration next week, or a request for reconsideration, should that motion pass next week, will Council be able to discuss and either reaffirm the rate from June of 2017 or change the rate should it feel that's appropriate next week?
Through the chair, essentially what would happen, what our procedural bylaw tells us can happen, or tells committee or council what can happen, is a notice of motion at a specific meeting would then have to be heard at the next meeting. So if a notice of motion was presented at a council meeting, it would be heard at the next council meeting. However, as we know in our procedural bylaw, the rules can be waived by a 2/3 majority vote. So that would be up to council next week to determine if, first of all, if that notice of motion, essentially when it is heard.
I'm glad I asked the question then. So not only do we have to hear Councillor Wells's motion for reconsideration, but assuming it passes, then the mayor is going to have to entertain a further motion to waive the rules and allow debate on that item next Tuesday night as well, before we could actually get into that discussion. And both motions would have to pass by a 2/3 majority next Tuesday. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Brunton again?
Well, a point of clarification on the need to pass the bylaw that applies all the rates. That has to be done at the next meeting, if I'm correct, in order for it to be implemented by January 1st. Is that correct?
That's true.
Thank you.
Okay, I hate to disappoint people that are here to hear about the holding tank situation, but that's just the way it is. Okay? Now, we have a deputation coming forward from Mr. Cliff Copeland to speak on the 2018 rate-supported operating budget, but to remind you, do not mention the holding tank issue. Thank you. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. I'm walking a very fine line here because it is related to the wastewater budget, and so I'm going to make an attempt to do it, and we'll see how we go. Thank you for your time. I would like to talk to you about something that I believe to be a serious issue, and it's fundamental to the wastewater budget that you have written out. I believe that the methodology of determining your fees, the way in which you've done it, and I use the holding tank issue, but that's because that is the one that's the issue. But the methodology, I think, imperils the integrity of your budget. Specifically, I would draw your attention to the page 13 of the budget. You don't have to read it. I'll just tell you what it is. You all know anyway. The wastewater budget is a very different kind of budget because it is a self-contained budget. It is designed to be a full recovery budget. Taxpayers pay nothing for wastewater or water. It's ratepayers, the people who pay the water bills, the sewer bills. That's who pays the thing fully. This particular budget for this year is about $17.8 million, which is a 1.9% increase over last year. And in that, council is asking for an additional $340,000. Out of that $340,000, $84,000 of that is specifically set aside for the increased revenue you expect to get from holding tanks. I then go to the page 7, and page 7, and I'll read this part to you. Page 7 explains what that increase is for, the $84,000 increase. And it says, that $84,000 increase is to cover the fixed cost of providing treatment plants and the increase of operating costs required to treat septic and holding tank waste. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So there's a definite purpose for that $84,000.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I think you're on uncharted territory here. I'll ask the deputy clerk to explain.
Through the chair, what we're hearing is a discussion from the deputation on the holding tank matter, and unfortunately, it's something that at this night we cannot discuss.
If I had to do that introduction. The issue isn't that, though. I have to use that as an introduction, but I believe that what's happened is that in order for you to set a rate for holding tanks, you have to have a starting point, and you don't have a starting point, and that's the issue in terms of cost. So it's in your, it's setting out the rules, it's in your
I'm
budget.
sorry, I have to cut you off.
Okay.
You are going into unallowed territory. Mr. County Manager, explain it again, please.
This council's, this organization's procedural rules exist for certainty. Respectfully, I've been here 7 months. In that time, you've had 2 reports on the issue. This council made a decision. You have considered your own rules on reconsideration, and in the time I've been here, you have affirmed that you want them once per annum. The whole point in having certainty is so that those who, it doesn't matter what the issue is, you have a vote, someone wins, someone loses, you go on to the next fight. You are in a period of time where you're not supposed to be fighting that issue. This is designed substantively so that the losers accept with good grace whatever issue they lost on. The winners can win with good grace, but you carry on with the business of governance. What we're having here, over the objections of the clerk, we've had numerous procedural rulings. We put those who voted in favor of these increases in an untenable position, respectfully. You shouldn't have to be in this position. We have already heard that on December 12th, there's going to be a notice of motion, which I assume to be in good order. I haven't checked. We did do a recorded vote, and you can only bring that motion for reconsideration if you voted in favor and have changed one's mind. That's the other rule on reconsideration, so I'll assume that to be the case. And the seconder will also have to be someone who's going to change his mind. That being said, very clearly, you are here to discuss a rate budget at this point in time. These are submissions that no staff member could make. And had a staff member made these submissions, I'd be looking at discipline. Completely inappropriate. I have no power, only the chair and the clerk do, over a delegate, but this is extremely inappropriate. We're completely offside our procedural rules. And frankly, this council and this organization deserves to have the capacity to make a final decision, and at least for a period of time, you've decided 1 year is appropriate in Norfolk County, then that's what's appropriate in Norfolk County. But 1 year of certainty, and frankly, you haven't had 6 months even at this point in time. You did have multiple reports on the issue this calendar year, and here it is again. I point those things out with an air of respect and with a desire for us to have the capacity to make decisions and move forward and continue on with good governance, and not because I favor any one position over the other. This happens to be around holding tanks today, but regardless, the point is the substantive need you need to protect is your capacity to make decisions and carry on to the next one. Thank you.
Having heard that, Mr. Copeland,
I understand.
I'm going to have to dismiss you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Oliver, you had a question or comment?
Mr. Chairman, I did. I was on the verge of asking to ask a point of order question before the county manager, the CAO, made his comment. I fully understand how our rules and our procedural bylaw govern us as council and govern our staff. I guess I am surprised to hear that those rules would govern a deputation, albeit legitimately booked in advance by a member of the public. I'm surprised that, I'm accepting your ruling, but I'm surprised that we can stifle a member of the public wishing to speak to us under our procedural rules. And that's just an observation.
Never mind. Okay, thank you for that. We are now going on to staff report FS 17-43, proposed rate-supported operating budget. Mr. Johnson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have before you the proposed 2018 rate-supported budget. With this,
James, could I interrupt, please? Let's wait for the crowd to disperse.
of course.
Thank you. Okay, I think we can proceed. James, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what we have before us is the proposed 2018 rate-supported budget. It represents a 1.9% increase on our net rate requirements. It's also the second of four budgets that we do present to council. I would like to introduce Kathy LaPlante, who will be doing the budget presentation, as well as Catherine Fanning, who has been very helpful in preparing this budget, as well as Lee Robinson and Bob Fields from the Public Works area in order to present this document for you today. If I could bring your attention to page 8 of 14. Sorry, page 13 of 14, my apologies. You can see a pretty good table there with the comparison of water and wastewater rates dating back to 2018. And you can see that for the average rate user, it works out to be 75 cents a month or $9 a year, which equates to a 1% increase. Kathy LaPlante will now do a small PowerPoint presentation which explains the document, and I am sure if there's any questions they can be asked during the presentation.
Thank you. Today's review of the proposed 2018 rate-supported budget is the second of three budgets that we prepare for Norfolk County. The first budget was the 2018 to 2027 capital plan that was presented and approved by Council back in October. The third budget will be the proposed 2018 levy-supported budget that is planned to be it is scheduled to be presented to Council for consideration on January 28th through to the 26th. As James has mentioned, we do have a small summary PowerPoint presentation just to complement the financial services report that's included in tab 1 of your proposed rate document. Throughout this presentation, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask and stop me at any time and ask any questions that you may have. So just for a quick overview, we just can't get to the next slide. And we apologize for we're having IT problems up here. We can't get the presentation up on it, but it is on your screen. I can't get this to move either. Okay, there you go. Thank you. Okay, just for a quick overview for Council and for any members of the public, Norfolk County is responsible for the purification distribution of potable water for water customers connected to the water system and the collection and treatment of wastewater. And involved in providing these services, there are numerous and the service is provided 100% by our Environmental Services Department, which there's a lot of legislation and quality, quantity, environmental standards that they have to meet. The main point that we want to make on this slide is that the costs related to the water and wastewater system, including all capital and operating costs, are funded thoroughly through direct user fees and service charges, and also from water consumption charges and wastewater processing charges. There are no amounts funded from tax levies. The next slide summarizes the proposed rate-supported budget compared to the 2017 approved budget. It outlines the operating costs for the water and wastewater system. That's the first section of the table. The second section of the table is the financing budget, which is basically related to financing costs for our capital component of the water and wastewater system. You'll notice in the first section, the operating budget, that's where the majority of costs are located. The operating costs, amortization expenses, and interest on long-term debt are the majority of costs. The operating costs amount to approximately $12.4 million for 2018. This includes salaries and benefits, materials, supplies, and all other operating costs. These amounts are reduced by the non-rate revenues for a total of $3.5 million. These are the items that I mentioned before. They're non-rate revenues, which the indirect user fees, for example, water turnoffs, water connections, etc. These are the fees directly paid by users for services provided by the Environmental Services Department. For this year, for the first time, there are 3 new initiatives proposed in the rate budget. This has been a long time. I think it's been at least 4 or 5 years that there's been many years that no new initiatives has been proposed. There are 3 new initiatives, and they're located on page 38 to 311. The details can be seen there. So you can see that the overall operating requirement is a reduction of $30,900. The financing side is what's driving the increase for the $340,000, and it's mainly due to a request for operating capital expenditures that there are no reserves or reserve funds available to fund. So how we finance these type of items are through the rates. We collect the amounts through the rates. The details of these are located on page 4-8. And as James had mentioned before, the $340,000 equates to an additional rate requirement of 1.9%. The next slide relates to how water rates and wastewater rates are determined. And the rates, as previously mentioned, are determined by current approved rate models that Council approved back in 2016, plus for the holding tank rates, the approval of the report that was presented in June of 2017. The water rates are based on 2 separate type of components. The first one is the basic charge. It's the fixed charge per month. It varies with the size of the meter. For most residential units, it's the smaller meter size, and it's a monthly charge. It's for the fixed costs related to providing the services for water. Examples would be administration costs. Basically, it represents 50% of the rate revenues that are collected. And it basically states that it's a rate that's provided that if we were to use no water or very little water at all, these costs would still exist, as we still have to provide potable water to customers. The second component is the consumption charge. It's based on the volume of water used by a customer. It's based on a per cubic meter of water used. And adding both of those 2 components provides you with the rate for the water side. The wastewater side, there's no, I believe it's still accurate to say there's no wastewater meter that's accurate. So the process that for billing purposes for wastewater that we use is for customers that are connected to wastewater, there is a basic charge and a volumetric charge, again, which is based on the water size, the water meter size, plus the consumption of water used. The next slide demonstrates over the years, there has been a reduction generally from 2011 to 2015, with the exception of 2012, where consumption was reducing. And what this is demonstrating is as consumption is reducing, water and sewer rates, costs to operate all the systems are increasing. So as consumption decreases, there is definitely an impact on water and sewer rates. 2016 and 17, 2016, the actual consumption was higher than anticipated. So there is an increase in the consumption over the 2015 year. But as you can see, the water consumption is basically pretty stable. So water consumption is stable, but costs are still increasing. And as a result of the operating budget that's been presented today, plus an estimate of the consumption for 2018, plus an estimate and increased for the growth of customers connected to the water and wastewater system, this chart outlines the proposed rates for 2018. And it's based on, again, what we just spoke about with the basic charges and the consumption charges. The following table is based on a monthly residential bill. It's based on a customer with 11 cubic meters. I'm not sure if council recalls, but a few years ago, we did a review of the actual average consumption for customers. We used to use 20 cubic meters, and it was determined at that time that 11 cubic meters reflected an average residential user. We'll probably be doing another review in the next year or two. We do have a new contractor, and we'll get information from this contractor on consumption and for average residential users. But for this year, we're still using the 11 cubic meters. So as a result of using, for 11 cubic meters, a residential home, which has a 15 millimeter meter size, the water is proposed to increase by 19 cents a month and wastewater 56 cents for a total proposed increase of a monthly bill of 75 cents, which represents a percentage change of 1%. The next and final chart here is a historical comparison of the residential rates. Again, this is based on a typical customer using 11 cubic meters. You'll note that the majority of, there's been substantial increases over the last, since 2011. You'll notice in 2016, there was a substantial decrease of 9.5%. That was a result of council's approval of the rate models, the new rate models, and the guidelines that approved. One of the largest item that council did change was going from a 2-block rate structure for water to a 1-block rate structure. And you see in 2017, last year, our increase was 5.5%. For 2018, we're proposing for a monthly bill of 75-cent increase and for an annual increase of 9%, resulting in an overall 1% increase over 2017. Sorry. So that's just a quick summary of what was in the report. If council has any questions, we'd be pleased to answer them.
Councillor Columbus, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to Kathy, there's a number of new homes going up in Port Dover, Simcoe, Delhi, throughout the county. We hear this from Mr. Baird. And are those numbers of these new homes factored in here already?
Through the chair to Councillor Columbus, yes, they are. Every year we get a new count of the homes that have been connected and commercial customers that have been connected, and then we estimate an increase for the following year for growth.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Ms. LaPlante. I noticed if you could go back a few on your slide to the proposed water and wastewater rates. That one right there. I noticed your water basic charge, which is the 15 meter connection. It's actually the only item there that's gone down. What was the factor that made that come down?
Through the chair to Councillor Height, that would most likely be a result of the additional customers that have been increased and the fact that consumption hasn't been reduced for this year. It's a combination of everything. And the water, the cost to run the water operations wasn't as substantial as possibly as it is the wastewater side of it.
Okay, then if that's the case, how come the wastewater basic charge actually went up then? Because what comes in must come out.
Through the chair to Councillor Hyde, it would mainly be because of the cost to run the wastewater systems is higher than the water side of it.
Okay, with that, have we ever thought about just blending those two rates?
To the chair to Councillor Hyde, not since I've been here, no, there hasn't been. Maybe James can answer that question.
Thanks, Kathy. Through the chair to Councillor Height. I've seen rate models where you get a water rate and then based on the costs for the wastewater rate, there's a percentage added to it. So for example, you could have your water rate at $1.50 a cubic meter, and then you would apply your wastewater rate at, let's say, 101% of that to try to represent the costs. I've seen that model in the past, but I've never seen the rates blended, because there are customers that have water and not have wastewater and vice versa. So we need those split, and we have evolved to a point where we can actually isolate the costs much better with water versus wastewater in order to get those unique rates that you see on the screen.
Okay, thank you for that. I guess at the same token, if you were a water customer, your bill would be $25 a month, and if you were combined, it would be a $50 a month. It just seems minimal input on the bill, so you would just see your rate as opposed to the different rates and then having to modify it all up and down like this. Yeah, there'd be factors in the back, but into the front.
Through the chair to Councillor Height, I just wanted to make a comment to that too. There's a different, not all customers that are connected to water are connected to wastewater also. So that might be another reason why we don't use a blended rate. And a number of years ago, before we actually, the new rate models of 2016, we did use what James was referring to, a surcharge for wastewater. And that fluctuated, it was generally higher than water rates all the time. It would be 100% or more of the basic charge generally.
Okay, so with that being said as well, then do we not have some large customers that are on a flat rate and they can just draw as much water as they want? How do you account for that in the financial side of things?
Through the chair to Councillor Height, not to my knowledge, there's no large customers in that situation. Ms. Robinson may be able to more accurately answer your question on that.
Through the chairman to council, we do not have any large water users that pay a flat rate. They pay the same rate as everybody else does.
Okay, on the consumption side of things. So,
So, through the chairman, I'm sorry, I apologize, I'm not understanding what you're getting at. So our large water users pay a volumetric charge as well. We don't have anybody that for example, we don't have anybody that pays $200 a month for unlimited water.
okay. And then back to Ms. LaPlante, like how do you calculate the industrial user's base meter rate compared to the residential base meter rate?
Again, it's a model that was adopted with, if you recall, DFA presented the rate model to calculate the charges. And again, it's based on the number of meters and the different size meters that they have, that we do have installed within Norfolk County. And again, it's to collect 50% of the water used by those customers.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I have two questions, and I guess they're actually questions that I would direct to Ms. Robinson. First of all, Lee, on page 3-9 of the document, which are the new budget initiatives, the first one, which is replacing the distribution and collection models, which I assume is software, for a cost of $35,000 in 2018. What would be the impact should council choose to defer that acquisition for a year?
Through the chairman to council, the models right now are currently maintained by the consultants. They're not actually done in-house. They're actually farmed out to consultants because we don't actually have the software to do that in-house. Because of the growth and development that we're seeing, it's a longer turnaround time when it needs to go out to the consultants, and the idea was that this would support the development community and the growth that we're seeing in the development community by allowing to have this take place in-house. Should council wish to defer it for a year, we would continue to simply use the external consultants and pay those fees. The payback period is about 18 months between what we pay in the fees and if we owned them in-house ourselves. Through the chairman to council, yes, we no longer have those in place. Correct.
Councillor Brunton, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First question is through you to Kathy or James, or maybe it's Lee, I don't know. I don't see anywhere in here, I'm looking for a breakdown of the wastewater. in terms of what our, I know there's a total volume in here, I believe. I'm sorry, I'm flipping through pages here looking for something else, but the hauled waste that's taken in there, do we have breakdowns of that on the different, like the porta potties? Like, there must be a breakdown of those particular types of waste. Do we have those figures in cubic meters?
Through the chair to Councillor Breton, in the chart, in the report, it is actually the consumption for water used by residential and industrial users. In the budget for the proposed 2018 for holding tank waste, we're estimating the consumption.
Well, sorry. You say it's in here? What page are we on?
No, sorry, the consumption information that is in the document relates to the water used by residential and commercial users.
Right.
There's nothing, you're correct, there is no consumption history regarding the holding tank. But the amount that we did use in the proposed 2018 budget for holding tank is 9,637 cubic meters. And for septic waste, we used 1,418 cubic meters, and that's based on...
Sorry, could you slow down there, please?
Sorry.
Holding tank 9767?
9637,
9637 cubic meters, right?
yes.
And what's the septic?
Septic is 1,418.
418 cubic meters. And then the rest would, is there a breakdown for is not the porta potty problem worse? Is that a breakdown too, or do you have that?
I don't have that information now.
Can we get that information?
Through the chairman to council, the porta potties and holding tanks are combined,
Okay,
and they don't come in separately, so we can't distinguish between the two of them.
okay, and so the rest then would be the urban residential or urban flow, correct? Okay. Okay, now, so the holding tank one is what we are currently charging the $10 for, correct? In the report?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. My next question, if I may, Mr. Chairman, if I go to page 3-8, and this question, I guess, would be to Lee. Lee, the new budget initiatives there, I see $50,000 for sanitary force mains inspections. I'm quite familiar with the Simcoe force main issues, but I'm not that familiar with the rest of the county. Is there quite a few of them in, say, the rest of the urban areas?
Through the chairman to council, yes, we have a lot of force mains, and the majority of them have never been inspected, so we're not aware of the current condition of them.
Okay, and again, I know the ones that we put in, or we had put in with development, are the total responsibility of the, I'll say, the landowner, i.e. Hydro One, Fanshawe, Sprucedale School, all that area knows a lot of force mains. Are they still responsible for that?
Through the chairman to council, the ones that you're referring to is what staff would consider to be private services. Right. So yes, they are responsible for those ones. Those ones are, I guess using the right term, they're localized force mains that only service a single property. So they're actually deemed to be their own private sanitary sewer lateral. It happens to be a force main, but it's still theirs and it's still their responsibility. This is referring strictly to municipally owned force mains.
Okay, and can you give me an example of one of them? Like, are there specific areas that encompass a lot of residential areas, for example?
Through the chairman to council, there's several of them within the municipality that have never ever been reviewed. The intention of this is to be able to review them, evaluate the condition of them to determine how often we actually should be monitoring them and inspecting them on a going forward basis. We don't actually know the condition, the internal condition. Council will recall the issue that we're dealing with the force main under the Lynn River in the vicinity of Victoria Street. And we don't want one of those incidences to happen again, so that's why we're putting forward this program. Should council wish to delay it a year, that would be council's decision.
Well, no, I'm not saying I don't support it. I just want to kind of get some clarification. Like when you refer to Victoria Street, that was a siphon, was it not?
It is a siphon, and then it's a force main on the other side of the siphon.
Okay, and
A good example, we have a small one outside of Waterford on Deer Park Road that pumps up to the main street there, and then flows by gravity over to the lagoons.
and that would be the type that the county
It's
looks at?
all of I mean, that's a perfect example where we have a force main, we have an old pumping station. There's several of them in Port Dover, there's several of them in Simcoe. We have a lot of force mains, smaller force mains, larger force mains all over the municipality, and we really aren't aware of the current condition of all of them, and this would allow us to evaluate the condition of them.
Okay, thank you. My next question is the last one there, the trenchless technology and the possibility of the relining. Is that something that you feel would be a real benefit to us? I would assume. Am I correct on that?
Through the chairman to council, certainly staff are huge proponents of using trenchless technology in order to do some of this work. We have some infrastructure that is deteriorating underneath the road, but the road itself is in excellent condition, and it would save us a considerable amount of money if we were able to use different trenchless technologies to do some repair work on those, and it would considerably lengthen the life expectancy of those assets.
Yeah, money well spent. I guess, have we ever tried it anywhere in the county?
Through the chairman to council, to the best of my knowledge, we have not done that. I have experienced using it in several different situations between structural liners, non-structural liners. There's a whole variety of different technologies out there. I've done pipe bursting. I've done a whole variety of them, and I've seen them used very, very successfully to save hundreds of thousands of dollars in terms of remedial work that's required. So I really would like to encourage the municipality to use that to stretch our dollars even further.
Yeah. Oh, yes, I totally support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Black, please.
Chairman, thank you, and I think my question might be to Lee, and it's, actually, I'm not sure, we're just going through the whole report, is that what we're doing?
Yep.
Any questions about the report? I'm looking at page 414 on the main report, and the increase in billing contract, $41,200. I thought my understanding was that we did this outsourcing contract to save money. So why is it that we're increasing our contract fee by $41,200?
Through the chairman to council, I'm going to refer that one to finance to respond to that. That had to do with how they were phasing in the changes, and I'll let Mr. Johnson explain that one further.
Thank you. Through the chair, that is the reason for the increase. With the contract, there would have been an incremental increase every year for those costs. Kathy, you could correct me if I'm wrong on that. However, Councillor Black, you mentioned that we chose to go externally in order to save costs. If you can recall from the report that was presented to council, we did recommend hiring staff to do the billing in-house, and there was a substantial savings to do the billing in-house, but the council direction at that time was to go external.
Okay, now I remember. Right, I didn't support that. Yeah, okay. Down to removal of, on that same page 414, controllable adjustments, removal of cross-connection program. Now, I thought the cross-connection program was something like eaves troughs going into the sewage system rather than the drainage system, and that we were told that that would save a lot of money in wear and tear on the sewage treatment plant. So now I see that we're removing that program. So I'm just wondering what's changed.
Through the chairman to council, we have not had any uptake on that program in the last several years, and we have seen through the historical efforts, we've seen a significant decrease in the amount of infiltration that we've been experiencing through this. There doesn't seem to be the need to budget money when we're not going to be spending it anyway. We're trying to make the budget more accurate reflection of the money that we're actually spending in a given year.
I guess that's really good news, because I know it seemed to be a problem that, we're putting unnecessary water through the sewage treatment plant. So that seems to have corrected itself then, I guess, somewhat. I did have another question on somewhere. Yeah, maybe you can get back to me later.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Columbus.
Just one more question, Mr. Chairman. If the holding tank rates were cut in half, how would it affect the numbers that you've presented here? Your mic.
Through the chair to Councillor Columbus, what we would have to do is do a recalculation of all the rates, and there would be an impact on the rates. It would probably be around approximately another $98,000 that we would have to redistribute amongst all the other users.
Okay, and that would be distributed on a percentage basis to industrial, commercial, residential?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure who to direct this question to, but Council's made significant contributions to improving fiber optics to the SCADA systems, and I see there's an increase here for the contract of $44,000. So the purpose of those investments were to bring the fiber optics to our plant, and I thought it was to actually reduce the operating costs, and here I see it going up. Why is that? And will we expect to see savings when the fiber does roll out completely?
Through the chairman to council, with respect to the SCADA systems, et cetera, most of the costs that you're actually seeing the increase in this case is actually the replacement of some of the components of the SCADA system. Where we will see, once we have the fiber fully rolled out, where we will see the cost savings will actually be in the overtime costs associated with it. Our biggest problem with respect to that is all of the overtime calls that are requiring staff to go out there. So the investment in the infrastructure will eventually see a reduction in the overtime costs that we're experiencing.
Okay, because farther down on the line, the second last line item, it says increase in GPS, SCADA, internet services, and software is $90,000 and $200. Like I'm just seeing increases at this point. I'm not seeing any decreases. When does that kick in?
Through the chairman to council, we had not been advised that the entire fiber network would be up and operational and connected to all of our new system, or to our systems sort of on the west side in 2018. So we did not account for those decreases in the overtime costs in that budget.
Hang on, did you just say that they won't be connected for 2018?
We had, through the chairman to council, when we were asked when they would be up and able to be connected to the system, we had been advised that it would likely be early 2019 before all of our systems would be connected to the new fiber that's being put in place.
Okay.
Through the chairman to council, to be fair, when we're working on these budgets, we're working on these in June. So a lot has changed since June. So when we're inputting that stuff, we can only go on the basis of what we have there. And at that time, that may have been the most accurate information.
Yeah, because they're there right now. And then my next question, I guess, it looks like there's a decrease in locate costs based on the actual history. I believe this was a report that came to council where we were going to get staff, and instead we got a very favorable bid from the contractor. Is that what led to that reduction?
Through the chairman to council, yes. There's a little bit more to it, but yeah, in summary, generally speaking, yes.
Okay, and then on that same page, decrease in taxes, change in tax class for 2 properties, $31,000. That's probably a finance thing.
I can speak to it a little bit through the chairman to council. We found, when staff were reviewing some property, we found that they seemed to be taxed in the wrong class, and so we applied to have that changed, and that's where we're seeing the decrease.
Sorry, whose property?
Through the chairman, our property.
We tax our own properties.
Yes. Especially for water and wastewater, they have to pay taxes because it's funded only by the users. So it doesn't come out of the tax levy, so they pay taxes on their properties.
Okay, so this would have been underfunded then, correct? We would have been paying under the amount of taxes?
Through the chairman to council, we were overpaying the amount of taxes required.
Decrease. Got it.
So this is the decrease in the amount that's going out.
Okay. My last question is, have you ever contacted Viola to see what they would charge to operate our water treatment plants?
Through the chairman to council, given the current union agreement, et cetera, I'm not comfortable that I can discuss that sort of thing in open session.
Okay, but you are aware that they do it for hundreds of plants across North America.
Through the chairman to council, they certainly operate our wastewater treatment plants, and so we're well aware of their capabilities, yes.
Okay,
Thank you. Councillor Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think through you to Lee, looking at page 10, I think it was mentioned once about flat rates. And do we have many people on strictly a flat rate service charge? And why do we? Can they not be converted over to a metered service?
Through the chairman to council, we do have a few people that are still left on flat rates for a variety of reasons, and we've been actively working to get everybody eventually converted over.
Okay.
The other reason for that is, if you will recall what I'm going to call the February of -40, where we had that extremely cold February, and we had a lot of water services, et cetera, freezing as a result of that. In order to keep those people having water, we had to allow them to have their taps running at a small trickle constantly. And we put them on flat rates to do that because the purpose was to save us the money from the pipes freezing and having to go unthaw the pipes. So we do have that because there are certain circumstances where certain things occur, and it makes the most sense to put somebody on a flat rate on a temporary basis. That's why we require that fee in the budget.
Okay, well, that makes sense. And I know that we developed a user fee policy. Is that in this document, or is that something standalone? Is it a standalone policy?
Through the chair to Councillor Black, the policy itself is not included in the document, but when developing the user fees for water and wastewater, we did use the policy. We followed the policy.
I wondered, I wouldn't mind having a look at that policy again. Could it be sent out? I would imagine if you send it to me, you can send it to everyone. Is that possible? Appreciate that. I do have one last question, and I know it's explained right at the very end, page 4-9, on staff development and training, and staff are asking that 2 people go to, is it Louisiana, or someplace down south, and New Orleans, Louisiana. I know there's details of it, but it just seems like a lot of money, and I guess I'm assuming that staff thinks that the value is there, but could we just have a further explanation on that value?
Through the chairman to council, that particular conference is of exceptional value to this municipality. It's the largest one in North America. I myself do not attend every year. I only go every few years. It alternates between Chicago and Louisiana. The amount of value that we get out of it is quite phenomenal. There are, on average, 60,000 people that attend this. It is by far the largest one. The papers that are presented, I personally sat through, at the last one that I was at, multiple conferences that have been very beneficial, and some of the cost savings that we're able to implement are from results of some of the things that we're seeing at these, were being presented at these conferences. Many of the presenters are actually Canadian. This is not a mostly US conference. It's quite split between Canada and the United States, and it's water, wastewater, and stormwater.
It's a great place to have it, stormwater down in New Orleans. Are they still trying to get rid of it?